A lot of things have been happening in the Duke men's basketball world. Several guys making a decision to return for their sophomore season. Duke basketball still needs to portal a little bit and bring in new crops of talent via the transfer portal and other speculations regarding next year's team. We continue that conversation today on Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on this Thursday morning, April 20th, 2023. Hope that you're doing well out there in the world. You can watch our show on YouTube each and every day. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, listen to our podcast feed, available on whatever podcast platform that you so choose. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils and follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. On today's show, my very good pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated is going to be back with us here on the program today to talk about some of the roster moves taking place for Jon Scheyer as he prepares for his second season as Duke men's basketball coach. So a lot of awesome things coming your way on the show today. And without further ado, I bring on my good pal Conor, who's back with us here once again. Conor, appreciate the time as always. I hope that you're doing well, my friend.
Yeah, doing all right. Portal season spins on. I was talking to somebody the other day that was telling me that it feels like there's no end to the college basketball season. We just jump from the national championship into portal craziness. So
yeah, no, we're still getting used to this. It's relatively new space each and every year. It feels like we're having to get decisions from a whole lot of guys and that sort of thing. But it feels like this is going to be kind of the new normal moving forward in the years to come, right?
Yeah. I think there's some timing elements that still need to be worked out a little bit and ironed out, but we're seeing those we're seeing that happen in real time. It's to cross sport compare. I was kind of taken aback when the football calendar, when the portal spun up on April 15th, because I had thought it was May 1st to May 15th, and that was a rule change. They changed the calendar on me, and I missed it. That was a couple months ago, and they moved it up a couple weeks. So yeah, we're gonna learn as we go. The oversight committees and that kind of thing, they're gonna figure out the timing of it, but right now, it's just all kind of craziness, and you got to kind of keep a finger on the pulse at all times.
We're certainly going to have a basketball-heavy conversation today as Jon Scheyer gets ready for his second year as head coach. But as we've talked about frequently with you do such a remarkable job, Conor, of covering both men's basketball, football. There are baseball stories that you can see at Devils Illustrated. I mean, you've got a pulse on everything taking place. We've got year two getting started for Mike Elko and his football program as well. I mean, on Saturday, there's a spring game coming up. Not as many question marks at like the quarterback position, so to speak, but still a lot of things that you've got to be aware of and understanding that there is a pretty big football season coming up in Durham as well.
Oh my God, you've got to be really optimistic with Duke football. They bring back virtually every contributor on offense, and it was a really good offense last year. It's not like they're bringing back a bunch of guys that just scored like 2 touchdowns a game.
Right.
But let's see how to phrase this. I want to say as Duke gets better, the schedule gets harder. Like they're the one team you look at moving out of the Coastal Division and into this divisionless ACC that really got handed a lot of the Atlantic Division teams. Like Duke's schedule looks a lot like an Atlantic Division team of years past. They're going to have to be as good or better than last year to even come close to getting to the 9 wins that they had last year. So that's a really interesting aspect of the football season that, we'll kind of whet our appetite for it with the spring game on Saturday, and then we'll revisit it,
Yeah.
2.5, 3 months from now when football season actually starts.
No kidding. A million more opportunities to talk about the upcoming football season and basketball season as well. But let's certainly deep dive into the season here for Duke. As we look back on year one for Jon Scheyer, we certainly have reflected with you post-Tennessee loss in the NCAA tournament, but haven't really gotten a chance to catch up since 3 sophomores made the decision, or I guess freshmen made the decision that they do want to have a sophomore season. I mean, tell me about this, Conor. How surprised were you by each of these decisions?
I think the only surprise comes from them not even testing the waters, not even throwing your name into the process, seeing if you get a combine invite. But when you think about it, you're at Duke. It's not like you're an unknown commodity. Like Tyrese Proctor, every game can be broken down. Every game is basically on national TV these days. It's not like these guys are great mysteries that have to go work out in front of teams in order to be seen. So all 3 of them, I think it's a case of they know what their strengths are. They know what their weaknesses are in the eyes of the NBA. And instead of, putting everything on hold and kind of being 1 foot in, 1 foot out with going through the NBA process, it just was a matter for each individual decision. It was a matter of, okay, I know what I know. I'm not going to change any minds. I'm not going to get to where I want to be eventually entering the NBA. I might as well just make sure I'm coming back and go through spring workout, be all in and committed. And if you're Jon Scheyer, I mean, your first season had some bumps in the road, but really ended on a pretty high note with an ACC championship. What did the winning streak get to? 10 or 11 games there at the end of the season. Disappointing exit as early as it was, but then you get good news with bam, bam, bam. It's kind of the rocket ship is pointed upward. That's a lot of optimism there in Durham.
Yeah, no kidding. Tyrese Proctor, Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski, all returning to Duke for one more season. More decisions set to be made, of course, in the transfer portal. Freshmen coming in. We've got a lot of things to break down, and we'll do that after our first time out here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. I'm talking about them all the time. I love Built Bar so much, and something exciting is coming to Built.com this Saturday. That's right, on April 22nd. I don't have all the details yet, but the excitement is real, and it's something you won't want to miss. If you know how Built works, they have the most incredible protein bars in the world, and they do these amazing flavor drops with unreal flavors in limited quantity. All bars covered in 100% real chocolate. So mark your calendars. Head to Built.com this Saturday, April 22nd, to be one of the first to discover what the hype is all about. I can't wait to see what the new flavor is, so make sure you use promo code LOCKEDON15, LOCKEDON15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Built Bar, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Moving forward here on today's episode of the show, alongside my pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. So Flip, Tyrese Proctor, and Mark Mitchell all set to come back for Duke this next season. All 3 guys also set to take a step forward into their sophomore seasons. All of them progressed in a very positive way this freshman year, which I think gives you a lot of reason to believe that, yeah, they're coming back. And yeah, the decision might have surprised some people given what's been customary in the one-and-done era for Duke. But they definitely will improve, again, going into their sophomore season for sure. Yeah,
I think with Kyle Filipowski, also the one point that you've got to mention is the hip surgeries. That's a big deal. Maybe if his hips are healthy, he's going through the process and going through workouts. But he's physically unable,
A great point. Yeah.
it's a little bit of a benefit for Duke. And Duke can keep him there. Duke can rehab him. Hips are interesting, man. They're I tend to think you don't.
We all got them.
Yeah. You don't think of how much athletic strain gets put on hips until you realize it involves everything. Jumping, running, shooting, all kinds of wear and tear goes into hips. And then you think about Kyle, he invites a lot of contact. Like I talked to him a lot during the season about how much he had to adjust going into the college game and how much contact he could absorb finishing through contact. And he was really good at it in the season because he geared himself up for that in preseason. He's taken a lot of bumps during the season. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. We're so far away from next season starting that I don't think anybody's pressing a panic button right now, but it's something that you want to have kind of a loose monitor on as we go through the summer.
Yeah, obviously want to make sure the recovery goes incredibly well. I'm glad to hear that whatever pain might have been there for Flip will no longer be the case moving forward. But you're right, that angle of, hey, you don't necessarily want to go and try to put on your best for these NBA teams if your body needs a little bit of work. And so you've got the advantage of coming back to Duke with the world-class rehab staff in college athletics to kind of take care of that and that sort of thing. So other guys coming back for their sophomore season, Tyrese Proctor and Mark Mitchell. We've been able to see Tyrese Proctor on social media back in Australia, getting to spend some family time this time of year, a world's away. It's still mind-boggling to sort of think about how far away from home Tyrese is throughout the year. And it's a big benefit to the Duke team that he's going to come back and be one of their primary ball handlers once again next season.
Yeah, this team really took off when Jeremy had to sit out those couple games in January and Tyrese had to go from being off the ball to on the ball. And then when Jeremy came back and was healthy, that it kind of freed him up. He could take the ball, but it was better for him to be off the ball and kind of pick his spots and let Tyrese run the show and initiate. I mean, that's where you had this team peaking at the right time was right around the time that they made that flip. And so that's another reason that, like, you give Tyrese Proctor a full season of being the point guard for this team. He's also there's so many ways to look at this team and look at the growth of certain players individually. And I don't think anybody exceeded what Derek Lively did, going from what we saw of him his first few games to the way he was playing at the end of the year. But one of the underrated aspects was Tyrese Proctor defensively, because I thought he was a defensive liability in the first month of the season. You could tell teams went after him. They attacked him off the ball. He was either going to foul you or you were going to be able to take him to the hole and finish. And by the end of the year, he was Duke's best on-ball defender. There was some kind of gear switch. There was an understanding of how much contact he could play with without being whistled for fouls.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing for Derek inside. But man, you talk about getting a full season of him and the defensive prowess that he showed at the end of the year. Man, this is going to be another strong Duke defensive team. You're not going to have that unicorn as a center. Duke is going to get a rim protector, but it's probably not going to be a rim protector that can also go out on the perimeter and be 7 foot, but also guard guards in ball screens. That's something that was Derek Lively and probably Derek Lively only.
Yeah.
But you're going to get another really strong defensive team, and it's going to kind of one of the key factors in there is having Tyrese Proctor attached to whoever the other team's best guard is.
And Conor, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do spend a lot of time talking about what Lively was able to do on defense. The rim protecting ability is certainly something that you can't take for granted. We talk a lot about Mark Mitchell returning for a sophomore season, and one of the first things you mentioned with Mark Mitchell is the defense first, right? And then you kind of talk about what that offensive game looks like. For Proctor, it's been a whole lot of the other. It's been the first point that you made there that, look, this team was really good when he was on the ball. We look at his three-point percentage numbers. We look at the free throw stroke that he's got, his layup and finishing ability. The one thing we failed to mention with Proctor, I feel as though, or I have failed to mention certainly, is that defensive ability. And at a guard position in particular, we know how important that is for championship teams to be built.
Yeah, he's a 6'5" guard. He's long, and I mean, more than anything, it's the fact that he embraces the defensive aspect of things. There's not a reluctance there, or at least in talking to him and in talking to Jon Scheyer and Tyrese's teammates. There's not, oh, okay, we had to bring Tyrese along defensively. We had to really make it clear to him that he had to be good on. No, he wanted to be really good on that side of the ball, and he turned himself into a really good player defensively. And that, more than anything, is like that's what makes him special. That's what's probably going to make him a top 20 pick in next year's draft. That not only everything that he gives you offensively, but the fact that he embraces that side of the ball. He embraces being a lockdown guy. I'm trying to think of some of the late game assignments he had. The NC State game at the end of the year where he's on Terquavion Smith, and Terquavion, I think, had something like 3 for 13, 3 for 10 in that game, and 2 of the makes were in the last minute when it was just desperation time for them.
That's right.
I might be a little off on the numbers there, but like he did a great job against Joe Girard late in the year. He just, you go down the list of the guards that he matched up against during that 10-game winning streak at the end of the season. Man, he played some really, really good defensive basketball. Like I said, you get a full year of that. You can already pencil it in as kind of, in my mind, as Jon Scheyer's first team at Duke was really strong defensively. They were one of the best defenses in the country. I think that's going to be the case again in year 2. I think they're going to lose the best, in my mind, the best defensive player in the ACC was Derek Lively. They're going to lose him, and they're still going to be really good defensively next year.
If you can keep the defense the standard going into next season, that's going to be pretty awesome to uphold when you look from year 1 to year 2 with Jon Scheyer. So taking a look at next year's squad, we mentioned these sophomores coming back, a really good freshman class coming in as well. But with Filipowski's return, that day was also headlined by Mackenzie Mbako's decision to decommit from Duke. Talk to me about this from people you talk to around the program, Conor, and then just knowing the recruiting stories themselves. How big of a surprise is this? How big of an impact is this when you look at next year's team in particular?
Yeah, it's a couple things. One, it's not all that surprising. Mackenzie Mbako is kind of the one guy in this freshman class, at least right now, like at least before the rest of the class gets to campus and they get to a handle on what they have with Caleb Foster, Jared McCain, TJ Power, and Sean Stewart. Mbako was the one guy they looked at and said, okay, we're probably only having him for 1 year. Like, he's probably a one and done player. And so you take that knowledge and you pair it with what Jon Scheyer said at the end of the season or late in the season, where Duke needs to get older. Duke needs to recruit players that are not going to be 6-month stays in Durham. You know, it's not like you want to turn down one and dones, but you're kind of okay with losing the one in this class that you thought is going to be a one and done. Especially when you think about, the vibes for next year are great, that Filipowski, Proctor, and Mitchell are all coming back, but that also that all 3 of them come with a caveat of you're probably losing them after next year.
Yeah.
Because of how bad next year's draft class looks like, and because of the supposed development in all three of their games, would probably land them in the first round. I mean, I think right now, if you're looking at way too early mocks for 24, Filipowski and Proctor are probably in everybody's top 20 or top 15. So you want to have a freshman class that's 6th round. You don't want to also be losing a major contributor from that class. And that's
point.
that's where it made sense that Mackenzie Mgbako would be asking out of his letter with Flip's return. I also heard something. I've reported it on my board. There also might be a grades issue with Mackenzie. Duke is still a hard school to get into. I have to feel like anybody Duke wanted to get in, they could still get in. But just from talking to people around, I've heard it's not just Mgbako saw that Flip was coming back, saw Mark Mitchell coming back, saw limited minutes in his future at Duke, and said that was not for him. I've also got the grades element of it to consider, what I've been told. So all that adds up to no, it was not surprising. It is a loss. Like, I'm not trying to downplay the kid's significance. He's a top 10 player in the class, but it's also a loss that, you'd rather have a sophomore year of Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell than a freshman year of Mackenzie Mgbako.
Yeah, no, totally great point there. And I think the point you make about, okay, now you forecast to what the 2024 draft looks like. You've got Filipowski and Proctor's names there. If there was this widespread one and done talent, then that's a whole lot of pieces exiting the door as you build for year 3 of the Jon Scheyer era, right? Like, we take a look at this Final Four team that Duke had. Mark Williams, Wendell Moore Jr., those guys are not freshmen that were first-round exits, plus the freshman class that was in place as well. Like, that was a massive overhaul that Scheyer had to work through. And then if you set it up this way, it doesn't feel like that's going to be the case in the years to come.
Yeah, I don't think that it will be like that. I think, Caleb Foster is the one out there that I could see coming in, and that all hinges on what Jeremy Roach does with his decision to stay in the draft or come back for a 4th season at Duke.
Right.
Caleb is the one that I would see as he could blow up enough to put himself into a discussion for the NBA next year. But that means you're still talking about bringing back Sean Stewart, TJ Power, Jared McCain as sophomores. That's a pretty good class moving forward into the 24-25 season. So, yeah, and then you're talking about whether you'll have Jaden Shoot back, Jalen Blakes, Christian Reeves. That crop is still around right now. So, you'll see some continuity more than years past with Duke's roster.
Yeah, so here we are. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're already talking 24-25 team and still have to build out a squad to compete next year, but that's what we love to do, talking basketball each and every day here on the program. So when you look at next year's squad, we mentioned Jeremy Roach has declared for the draft. He's got his eligibility still remaining. Like, if he wants to return, he certainly can do that. There is, however, a timeline in place in which he's got to make that decision, and factoring in these college visits for transfer portal players that could potentially be joining the Duke team. I guess my next question, Conor, is when do you foresee another decision? Like, when do you forecast more news? Is it in a few days? Is it more 2 to 3 weeks in the next month? I mean, what does the calendar look like for Duke basketball fans?
There's kind of 2 calendars in my mind.
Okay.
The one calendar is Jeremy Roach and his decision. That is, he has to make a decision by midnight of May 31st to either stay in the draft or exit the pool and return to Duke. I figure you're going to get the decision on that before, it's not going to be 11:55 p.m. on May 31st and we're finally learning what the decision is. We're going to hear before then. it's worth remembering, his buddy Trevor Keels ran it up to the deadline. I think it was only a couple hours before that deadline that Trevor made his decision. And Trevor was really, from all sources that I've ever talked to about Trevor, he was really torn last year on whether to come back or stay in the draft pool. Not that means that'll be the same for Jeremy. But it's worth remembering that really you don't hear about Duke looking at a possible Jeremy Roach replacement because they need to keep the scholarship for him open. If Jeremy Roach comes to Duke and says, I want to come back for a fourth season, and Duke has to say, well, we're out of scholarships, that's not a situation anybody would ever want to be in. Where you're turning down a senior guard who's, I think, scored more than 1,000 career points.
Been in your program, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're not going to put yourself in that kind of situation. The other calendar is to add a rim protecting big man. That's kind of the worst kept secret in Duke basketball right now. Is they're going to add a 5 through the transfer portal. It's the only real name we have that's solidified out there is Caden Shedrick from Virginia, and Duke is going to bring him in for a visit in about a week and a half. I have some reservations. I think Caden Shedrick is a good option for Duke, but I don't think he's their number one option. The problem is I don't think Duke's number 1, 2, or even 3 options are in the transfer portal yet. And this is where I give some credit. I give some understanding to the people who want to talk about the transfer portal ruining college sports. Okay, yeah, there is tampering. There is very much is a quid pro quo of telling coaches, telling kids, AAU coaches, hey, if this kid enters, we're very interested. That goes on everywhere. And that's kind of what's going on right now is Duke looks at guys on rosters and says, this is who would really fit our program. If he enters, then yeah, we're going to be really interested in him. So that's where Caden Shedrick is the one in the portal now. Without knowing the other guys that still have decisions, whether they're going to remain at their schools or if they're going to enter the portal, then you'll hear their names thrown out there pretty quickly. But right now it's kind of a waiting game to see who's going to actually jump into the portal and make themselves available.
And how close to the portal timeline, again, for folks, Conor, like in college basketball, where are we at to think that, because here we are, a lot of people just assume, okay, if they're not in the portal by now, they're not going to end up being there, right? I mean, people were wondering with Duke's roster in particular, names like Jaden Shute, Jalen Blakes, Christian, do they end up there, right? And no decisions have been made. I guess that puts in place that there could still be an avenue where they left then if the portal is still open. Like for all of us here, what does that timeline look like to where there could possibly be more names that Duke would be interested in joining?
Yeah. It's a 60-day window beginning the day after champions. I'm sorry, I'm reading.
Totally fine.
I don't have this well researched. But it's a 60-day window after the national championship. So
we've got tons of time then left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, how long ago was the national championship? About 17 days ago, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, we're not even a third of the way through this transfer portal window. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a while. And that's where, there are a lot of times that I envy college coaches, and right now is not one of them. Right now is not the time. Like when you think about how they've got to be patient, fans are not the most patient. So they're hearing from fans that want to have the roster determined and one thing in concrete, and get excited for next year already. But yeah, when you think about, like, if you're a college coach and if you take an option now and then 3 more options in the next week look better to you, then, you're filled with regret. If you wait too long, then you're going to get into June and not really have much. Right. So it's crazy times. Like I said, I do not envy the people that have to put together rosters right now.
Do you foresee any of those other scholarship players at Duke exercising the transfer portal, or does it seem as though they'll be returning for another year?
At least not right now. I mean,
Sure.
I could see a situation where if Jeremy Roach comes back, you figure Jon didn't really show any tendency to play 3 guards at a time this year. So you figure only 2 guards at a time are going to play. And if Jeremy Roach comes back, that a chunk of minutes is going to go to Proctor and Roach. And then Caleb Foster and Jared McCain are both combo guard, gifted scorer types. I don't know if Jalen Blakes would want to stick around as the 5th guard there. I don't know if Jaden Shute wants to stick around as the guard there. Like, that's what I would keep in mind. Christian Reeves, I think, is a little more solidified. Like, Christian was going to be a project when he came in. He was a project this year. He was not, there's some belief out there, I think, that he was just supposed to take off after Derek Lively left and be the starting center. That was not that. Like, a project doesn't just all of a sudden accelerate in year 2.
I will say, I do want to give it felt like every single time Christian Reeves found the floor, he found a way to find an open dunk, like right underneath him. So shout out to him, and hopefully we get more of those in the years to come, because he was definitely ready for his moments when he got in there.
There is definitely something to build on with Christian Reeves, and I think he knows that. I think he came to Duke with long-term goals in mind, and I think he's going to, no matter who they add through the portal at the 5, he knows that he's going to have a chance to make more of a role for himself next year. And then in the years to come, that role should increase if he continues on his development path. It is all with Christian. It's all about running his race. And that's something he's shown that he's willing to do so far. He showed it at Oak Hill. He showed it this past year at Duke redshirting. So I think he's a little more solidified than Jalen Blakes and Jaden Shute as far as coming back next year.
Well, the one thing we do know is that, yes, maybe 45 days-ish left in this transfer portal window. If we want any of that news, we know that we're going to be able to find it at devilsillustrated.com and with your remarkable work. So, Conor, give me one more plug, promote the website, if you will, and then we'll get out of here today.
Yeah, it's duke.rivals.com is where you can find Devils Illustrated, and come on by. We'd love to have you. We have lively discussion, not just about Derek, but lively discussion on all topics, Duke basketball and football. And we'll get you in there and you'll feel at home.
That was good. That was well done. I love that. Conor, we'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right. That's my pal Conor O'Neill joining us on the program today, and that's going to wrap up another episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Again, thank you for your support. Shout out to our everydayers who are listening to us each and every day. Thanks for being a part of that elite company. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. We talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.